That has got to be one of the most chaotic, frantic, insane, simultaneously hilarious, yet utterly terrifying episodes of TV I have seen in a long time. This episode, which I would consider to be masterful and spectacular, yet terrible and horrific, yet so exciting and amazing, and just so much happened, so much kind of came from it, so many sides were drawn, and so many things have kind of shaped what is going to be the final two episodes, which is not really the way I thought the show would be going, but it seems it's going to be heavily focused post-election, or post-calling the election. The family, the siblings, they have kind of picked their sides, finally, against each other. Things are revealed, things come out. Greg finally gets some actual plot-heavy play. So much happened in this episode. What an episode. To quote Eric from True Blood, this episode was crazy. One of the things I have really liked that this season has done, and this episode is once again one of those episodes where essentially every episode is just like a moment, like a thing happens, and this episode might even be the most that kind of thing. Like, they're not ever bottle episodes, but it's like, you know, Logan dies, it's that episode, his wake, next episode, they go on a retreat, and it's all just there. Like, each episode is just like a moment, a thing, one kind of thing, and this is the election night, but it's kind of even more extreme, where it's almost in real time. Like, at times it kind of cuts ahead, but it's essentially just a couple of hours on election night. And it is so exciting. It's so exhilarating, like on a TV show level. The writing is superb. All the character interactions are so good. Yet kind of on a real world scale, it is truly horrific, truly terrifying, really crazy. I honestly feel like I can't tell how much this feels like, well, this is clearly taking something that's, you know, there in real life, but cranking it to like 15 out of 10, or if this is horrifyingly close to an 11 out of 10. Like, yes, still very extreme and over the top, but dangerously close to what can happen with how much influence media has. So there's just a lot going on, but what I think I really enjoyed about this episode is, despite what my political leanings may be, I mean, I'm not from America, so it's very different here in Australia, but it doesn't really matter how I feel about who should win or who shouldn't win, because I am focused in this show on the characters. Everyone in the Roy family sucks, and they're not good people, and I probably wouldn't be on their side in any situation in real life. But Succession's writing is so superb. HBO just has such a good job of making me care about anti-heroes in just pretty much all their shows. That's like their bread and butter, and this is one of the best examples of that. So despite probably not agreeing with Roman, I'm on Roman's side this episode, because from a character perspective in this show, Shiv has betrayed her family. And Shiv has been so self-righteous and so arrogant, and there are times when I'm like, maybe Shiv's not as bad as I kind of, you know, think she is, and how I feel like they present her at times. But then you remember that she so arrogantly thinks she's the best, yet never kind of proves it with any kind of thing she does. Like, every time she does something, she botches it. She's always kind of, I don't know, she's got this veneer of thinking she's better because she pretends to be on one side of politics and kind of throws the rest of her family under the bus. Yet the second she gets a sniff at being in power, being the CEO, when her dad in season 2 was like, hey, you want to be in charge? You want to be the new CEO? She throws all her morals out the window, all ethics out the window, and is gung-ho on that happening. To her detriment, where she ruins it for herself. Like, she's always kind of pretended to be this thing. And even though she might be right, and they should absolutely not be doing what they are doing in this episode, I don't care. Because I'm like, Shiv, you've done too many things. You've betrayed them so consistently this season. Like, at first, I'm like, well, she's taking Madsen's side. But as each episode progresses, every single time they confide in her as siblings who trust and love each other. You know, trust and love each other as much as they can as the Roy siblings, because they're so toxic and insane and crazy and backstabbing and all the things. They, at this point, really trust each other, mostly. And even though, like, you know, Kendall Roy will be like, hey, secret side deal, I think maybe I should be the top dog, but I don't want to lose these guys. Like, he's kind of, like, semi-trying to betray them at times, but not in the way that Shiv does, where she literally just calls up Madsen straight away and is like, hey, they're trying to do this, we've got to block it, you do this. Just immediately, all the time, continuously, for episodes. And Madsen, I just hate him. He's disgusting. Like, I don't know how they made me hate, like, Eric from True Blood. Eric from True Blood, one of the sexiest Skarsgårds. He's definitely in the top 4 of the sexiest Skarsgårds in the world. And to make me despise this actor, he's just done such a good job. I hate him. And when we find out about all that blood stuff with his assistant, horrendous, beyond disgusting. And he's like, every time we get to know more knowledge about him, I'm like, I don't care how much Kendall and Roman have done and how bad they are as people. He's way worse. I feel like they've presented it that way, and they've slowly kind of made you go, oh, wait, he's way worse. Like, each time we know anything more about him, you're like, he's way worse. And we found out last episode, he's not even an actual, like, coder, so he's, like, kind of full of shit as well. I just don't like him. And so I'm kind of on Roman and Kendall's side completely. And so when Shiv and Roman kind of, like, they put their feet down and they go head-to-head with who they're backing in this presidential election, despite any notions of what I think may or may not be right, I feel myself siding with Roman, which I found so compelling and fascinating in this kind of insane way. Like, at the end of the episode, his guest on the phone is like, hey, Mr. POTUS, ba-ba-ba, and he's like, oh, buddy, and they just like, it's such this insane moment. Like, I don't know, it kind of just makes me feel like such foreboding dread and horror. Yet I'm kind of giddy with excitement for these characters because they just keep winning, and it's just like, you can just feel that the closer they get to the top, just that fall is going to be so much more painful, so much more brutal. Or wouldn't it just be crazy if they just came out on top and they just win? Like, at this point, you just have no idea. I had no idea that the presidential election would have such a role in the final episodes. He has, like, there's a line where they say the funeral is coming up. So the funeral will be episode 9. And then for the finale will be all the aftermath of this and finding out who is the CEO in the end. And I just don't know where it's going to go. Like, will this be about the court cases following this? It's just, I don't know. This show always does stuff where, like, I thought I knew where the show was going, and then it does something like this and spends a whole episode on election night and ends the episode like this, where they've kind of signed a deal with the devil and done some potentially insanely illegal and crazy things, but it all comes down for me to character. Like, the whole episode, Kendall has these moments where you just see his face, and we just hold on him for just slightly longer than usual, and you just see him having this moment of like, what are we doing? We can't do this. And it all keeps coming back to his kid who's barely been on the show for ages now, is having all these kind of real life consequences, and his ex-wife is calling him, and he keeps saying stuff like, oh, I'm doing this all for my kids, but it never actually feels like that. It feels like he's just saying that, and he's trying to make himself feel better as a father, as a person, but it is kind of all more about himself personally, and trying to impress his dead father, and doing all these other things unrelated to his kids. But this episode, it started to kind of make me feel like, wait, maybe he does really truly care about his kids. He's kind of become disillusioned with trying to be CEO and all the craziness going on post their dad dying. But now it's really push comes to shove, he does care about his daughter. He does care about how the world is going to treat her, how they are treating her, and how he's mostly responsible in some way for all of that. And so I found that really interesting, where kind of Roman's on one side, Shiv's on the other, they have planted their feet, they are not moving, and Kendall's in the middle. And the whole time I thought he would land with Roman, but because of this little subplot with his daughter, and at first I didn't think he was being kind of sincere, but then I'm like, well, maybe he is. And so he's coming over to Shiv's side more. But then when the reveal is that Shiv has betrayed them, oh, I loved behind the windows where you see Kendall, but you don't hear him. You don't hear the phone call, and then you don't hear what he's saying to Greg, but everything comes out. Everything comes out finally. Shiv's truly brutal betrayal to her two brothers has finally come out, and then when Kendall comes back into the room, it's just all out in the open, and it's just such excellent scene. The writing and the acting. I mean, it's kind of almost a pointless thing to say when you're like, the writing's really good in Succession. Oh, the acting's also pretty good. It's never not superb, but some moments, like last week in the balcony scene with Tom and Shiv, like some moments just hit so hard. And this moment of kind of the reveal and revelation of Shiv's betrayal, it really hit home for me. I found it so exceptional. I found it so heartbreaking for the boys, kind of devastating for Shiv, but also I felt kind of satisfied, like that Shiv has finally been ousted, and it really kind of pushes her, because they kind of go, it's got to be the other guy, it's got to be Mendes or whatever his name is, who cares, the right-wing guy, it's got to be Red, we're going Red, all on Red, baby. And everyone's faces as they kind of make this huge call, and seeing Shiv, it's kind of like Shiv's been against them, but kind of inside the camp, and now ousted on this edge, so her and Madsen will be fully against the two brothers, which is going to create some crazy, exciting tension and scenes coming in the last 2 episodes. It actually fills me with such dread and, like, I don't know, excitement, but also such melancholy. 2 episodes left! This is one of the great shows, and it's been such a joy to watch. It's so exciting, and just, it fills me with so many different emotions. And I think the thing that this episode did that some of the last few haven't done as hard is it's done all these big, huge character moments, big moments in the show, but it's just been so funny. Oh my lord, this episode was funny. Tom and Greg were just firing on all cylinders. This was almost a Tom-centric episode for the first half. And at one point I'm like, are we just going to follow Tom over this crazy night? And then as it all kind of kicks off with the fires in Wisconsin at the ballot place, the siblings all kind of kick into gear and become the main characters again. But Tom gets a lot of play in this episode, and he is spectacular. He is probably the most underrated actor and character in the show. He's so funny. He's so funny. I always have loved him and Tom, like Tom and Greg. And Greg's kind of been the one that I've liked more. But I feel like this season, Tom has been given some really juicy, meaty stuff. And it's just, he's nailing it. Like I mean, they've all nailed it. It's apples and oranges or whatever. I guess it's apples and apples. Everyone's just killing it. Everyone's so good in this show. It's a joy. It's a joy. And it's terrifying. It's so many emotions. I feel overwhelmed by this episode. I feel overwhelmed by where this show has taken it, and it's so good. I think Roman as well, I really enjoyed how he kind of has, like, because the last couple of episodes, Roman has felt like, oh, he is a ticking time bomb. Like, the last few episodes, last 2 or 3, I feel like the whole family, in their own separate ways, are ticking time bombs, and they're all about to explode, and self-implode, or do all the things that bombs do when they go off. Yeah, this episode, Roman felt like, even though he's doing this crazy thing, and he might regret it later, he was at least kind of taking a stand and being very firm, very direct, and being like, this is what we want for this reason and this reason. And like, we want to lose this deal. We want to crash this deal, and this president is going to help us do it. The other guy won't. So we got to push this. We got to push it. It doesn't matter because it's all about this one thing. And he just felt so confident in a way we haven't really seen him before. Like when he's firing people a couple of episodes ago, it felt chaotic. It felt unplaced. It felt kind of petty. And like, I felt like he was being very kind of self-loathing. And he was kind of like, oh, no one trusts me to be here. You're fired. You're fired. And there's kind of like a weird patheticness to it all. Like a little man trying to stand in a big man's game and just doing what he can and throwing around his power. Directionless and odd. And kind of, yeah, just not assertive. And even though he might be doing something that is wrong and he'll regret it, it felt really kind of, I don't know, I felt like it was exciting. And it was like a different side of Roman. Like when he's telling Shiv, it's like, our dad would do whatever. Like, oh, he might have stopped that war, but he started that war. Like, he does whatever he wants. I'm going to do whatever I want to win, to get what I want. And it was a different side of Roman. I felt like it was really interesting. Because usually, I feel like it's Kendall who's kind of in more in that position, and he kind of pulls Roman in. Yeah, this episode, it was Roman pulling Kendall in, which I found was a really nice switch up of their dynamic. And due to all the things with Kendall's daughter, I felt like that really worked. That really played. Like, it didn't feel out of character for either of them, yet it changed the dynamic really well. The way this final season has played out, where it's focused on the 3 kids and how different they are, and then having Connor Roy on the side, this was such a perfect example. An encapsulation of the whole season, where they're doing so many big things, and then Connor's at the side being like, I may have made a mistake. Another little deal. And Roman's like, yeah, we got your oldest son. And he just like pushes him to the side. Everything with Connor Roy this episode was really fun. Finally, I suppose, his entire show arc of trying to be the president has tragically come to an end. All us conheads out there are very disappointed, obviously.